Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let's Get Visible, a podcast for small business owners, helping them to grow, have a sustainable business, and get more visibility online. I'm Dawes Brown, and I'll be bringing you SEO and digital marketing tips, as well as interviews and conversations with other small business owners. So, let's get started. So today I'm joined by Savvy Sally. Sally's business journey has been far from a straight line. First, she studied law and sociology at uni. Then she fell into a career in financial planning, which meant an additional 8 years of study while working full time. After 15 years in that career, having 2 babies meant she needed a new direction. So, in 2016, she co-founded an online business called South Coast Kids. This is where she realized how much she loved social media and marketing, and that it's what she would have done from the very beginning. A business award, 13,000 followers, and 18 months later, Sally decided to follow her true passion and started Savvy Sally, a social media and digital marketing business. So, welcome to the Let's Get Visible podcast, Sally. Yay!
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited because I could talk about this sort of stuff all day, every day.
Yes, absolutely love it. And as part of that introduction, one thing that I didn't get to mention is you've also recently launched your podcast.
I have, yes, and it's so much fun.
Where you can talk and talk about this stuff again endlessly. And yeah, what's the name of that podcast?
It is called Sideshow Sally, and it's all about helping people move from having a side hustle or a side business into full time. So it's a process that I went through myself, and I just thought no one else is really talking about how to do it and how to do things on a zero budget when you're first starting out. So that's what I thought I'd talk about. And I'm about 12 episodes in, I think, and I just love doing it because I get to talk.
And I love listening to you. I love your episodes, and there's
Thank
so
you.
much gold in them.
Thank you.
Particularly the point that you've mentioned, yes, when we do start out, we're not all rolling in it. And so how do we launch something on very little to no budget and to start at a place, you know, that's going to lead into something sustainable as well? Because we all don't launch and go into business going, oh, we only want to do this for a little amount of time or just temporarily. You know, we want it to grow and develop into something that is sustainable. So I think sharing all of those insights and tips is definitely what we need. And I love that you're also a South Coast girl and you also studied sociology at uni. Now,
Yes.
We're also the same age. Like, we've got so many things. When we met in person last year, in 2019, we realized how much we had in common. We've both got 2 boys. We're on the South Coast. We studied really similar things at uni. Our interests are really similar, and we just get on like an absolute house on fire. So having you here today is an absolute pleasure because I know it's going to be a good one for our listeners as well. Yay!
I hope I can live up to the expectation that you've just set.
Absolutely. I know that you will. But we connected over a Google My Business inquiry, and it wasn't necessarily to offer you Google My Business services, but someone needed that service, and we just happened to, come across each other in that, I guess, platform. And then we continued our relationship on social media before eventually meeting in person and discussing some exciting things to work on and to do together that we'll share with the audience a little bit later on. But you mentioned this as well, and in launching your podcast, the reason why you launched Savvy Sally and having that, you know, background in all of those other bits and pieces, and then realizing this is really what I want to do. So can you share with us a little bit more about why you started Savvy Sally and what has this meant for you and your business and your life?
It's a funny thing because I think it's what I was always meant to be doing, as you sort of said in the intro. Because when I first got to uni, I was actually doing law and communications with the
Right.
intention of either becoming a lawyer or a journalist, two completely different things, I suppose.
Wow.
But I found the journalism degree was just too like stuffy and all that. I just wanted to write. I just wanted to communicate. I just wanted to, you know, put words together and make things sound great. And I think that's just what I've always been into. So even when I fell into financial planning, which was funny because I thought I was going for a job at a law firm, as you do. And it was actually a financial planning firm, but I didn't realize that until I was in reception waiting for my interview. And I'd never heard of financial planning. I had no idea what that was, but I thought, I'll just go into the interview and just make jokes and whatever. And they ended up offering me the job. And that's why I had to do the extra study after that. But even when I was working all that time as a financial planner, I still just loved the marketing side and the writing side. So I wrote a couple of kids' books teaching them about money, as you do. And I used to look after the marketing for the business. And I just think that's where my interest always was, but I'd been severely sidetracked for 15 years. And so then after I had kids, financial planning is you're either an all-in or an all-out type thing. Oh my goodness,
I hear you. Yeah.
Yes, and it's just not family friendly. So when I had a cup of tea with a friend who I hadn't seen for ages, who you also know, Delise, and we just decided to start a business, which was South Coast Kids, and that was when social media was just sort of becoming really big for businesses, and that was my role in that business, was to do the social media. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is the thing. This is the thing. This is what I'm always meant to have been doing. It's the thing. And and I think with South Coast Kids, we struggled to monetize the great idea that we had. So I just thought, well, I can't just keep working for free. I have to be doing a business. And ironically, or maybe not ironically, I watched a video on Facebook about how to start your own social media business. And after watching that, I just went, you know what? I'm just doing it. That's it. And I think it was my birthday, and I just decided that day.
I love it. Just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Yep.
I get this weird feeling when something's really right. I get a weird feeling, it's really, really strong. I have to do this. And so I just had that feeling, and the barriers to entry, I suppose, in a digital business are very low. You just need your laptop really, and your imagination.
And an internet connection,
yes, which is funny because it's not very good where I live, but I still managed to get through. So I guess it was just the natural interest was always there, and it just took me a little while to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but I love that, and I think it's that gut instinct, isn't it? When you just get this feeling, and it's an overwhelming feeling, but it's a positive feeling. And it's your go button. It's telling you, yep, this is it. This is where I'm meant to be. And funnily enough, I spent 15 years in corporate land and predominantly in the financial services industry. So in insurance and in broking, doing training and compliance stuff. And same with you, had my two kids, tried to go back to that environment, and it just was not family friendly. Like you said, it's either you're all in or you're all out. And my journey into digital marketing was kind of the same. I was like, I really want to launch an online business, taught myself how to build and develop, my own website, press launch. And when nobody came, that's when I fell into the world of SEO and online visibility and those types of things. But the feeling was just so overwhelming in a positive way that I couldn't get enough of it. I couldn't, my brain just wanted to continue to absorb all this learning and all this information. And I found my passion, in my mid-30s.
Yep.
After having done, the sociology and psychology degree, working in financial services. This is why I'm giggling, because we've got so many things that are so similar, and even age-wise, kid-wise, all of that kind of stuff.
Twinning.
We are, absolutely. We're like little twins that were just meant to find each other and meant to be, which we did. As mentioned, we continued to reach out and connect on social media, predominantly I think it was Instagram.
Yep.
And yeah, it's nice to have those, local relationships where you are each other's, little encouragement buddies. And again, really similar areas of digital marketing, yet, still quite different. So talking about Savvy Sally then, and having launched that,
Mm.
after having that press, go button moment happening.
Yep.
Once you did launch that, can you explain a little bit about the way in which you best serve your customers or your audience, and how that all works, how that process works?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess in a nutshell, what I do is people who aren't comfortable or don't have experience in digital marketing, so social media primarily, that is where I come in. And I just, as you said in the intro, my first ever Facebook page that I managed, I grew it to 12 or 13,000 in 18 months.
That's insane.
I know. And it was all organic as well. There was no paid advertising there. And that was, I guess, the clincher that made me realize not only do I love this, but I can actually do it as well. And so I guess what I really specialize in is helping people get their social media to the next level organically.
Yes.
So the thing I love about social media is that you can be good at sales, or you can be good at photography, or you can be good at marketing, but that doesn't necessarily make you good at social media, because it's got its own little foibles and little intricacies that you need to know how things work.
Oh,
the
yeah, absolutely do.
Yeah, the algorithm changes all the time, but there's little things that you can always do consistently. And so I guess that's what I bring to the table, is that I'm an absolute nerd when it comes to knowing what works and what doesn't. And I test on my own social media so that my clients don't suffer for my experiments. I suffer for my experiments.
I love that. Yep.
So yeah, I started off really, I just approached the local business chamber where I live, because I saw that they had these social media pages, and I could tell that they didn't really have a handle on what they were doing. And I just approached them and met with them, and I said, look, this is what I've built with South Coast Kids. It's quite similar, blah, blah, blah. And they said, yep, let's do it. And they're still my client to this day. And that's, I guess, where it started. And it proved to me again that South Coast Kids wasn't really a one-off.
No.
It was something that I can replicate, because I'm understanding the intricacies, but also bringing in that marketing and copywriting and photography element that I do. So my clients really just say, I need somebody to look after my social media. And then for them, I guess it's a set and forget, because I can completely autonomously come up with ideas. I can't sleep because I have so many ideas going around in my head. So yeah, I just come up with the ideas and get the photos and come up with the content and use the algorithm to their advantage, and my little tips and tricks, and coming up with strategies and all that sort of thing. So I can manage it for people, but I also coach people on how to do it themselves. And that ties in with the not necessarily having the budget to have someone manage it for you.
Yep.
So, and coaching I love, again, because I get to talk.
Again, we're so similar. I could talk underwater for hours and hours on end, particularly when it's about visibility and SEO and those types of things. But yeah, I think what drives us really is the passion, and we love what we do. And if you don't have that component in it, you can still be, nerdy and geeky and know all the bits and pieces, but that passion element really does need to be there for it to be sustainable. But I love the way that you've also got the options of, yes, I can do it for you, or I can support you through things like coaching, because many, of us who launch a new business, whether we're solopreneurs or small business owners with a little team, budget tends to be one of those things, I guess, that we don't have in the beginning when we're trying to build our businesses. And yeah, so having something that is still tailored to us that we can tap into and help us to build, that brand and that visibility from a social media perspective is just so important. And I think I've shared with you, like, I'm certainly not a social media expert by any means of the imagination. I will only post when I feel like I've got something, to say. But like you, when I do, it usually hits me when I'm either in the bathroom or 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I can't sleep because our creative brains just keep, buzzing along. So I've got to write it in my notes on my iPhone or on a piece of paper, because by the time I wake up, I'll forget. It's like these little sparks. I don't know if you have those moments too, but it's like if I don't write it down here and now, I'm going to forget by the time I get to the next day or get to my desk and things like that. So
absolutely, that happens to me when I'm in the shower,
yeah,
or something like. I think because that's the only time your mind is cleared of everything else. You've got that clarity, I guess. And so I'll be in the shower and I'll be like, oh my God, I've come up with poems for clients in the shower.
Yeah, it's
which
insane.
It is. I think they'd freak out at that imagery. But yeah, it's just amazing how it just comes from nowhere. And yeah, exactly. I tend to not have my phone next to my bed, because if I did, I'd never get off it and I'd never ever sleep. So I just go, remember, and hope that I remember it the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that. So with the organic reach, and when you launched South Coast Kids, I guess lots of things have changed in that time frame, particularly with social media profiles like our Facebook and Instagram and how they all work. So is there any like little tips or things that you can share with us today if people are thinking, organic stuff isn't working anymore? Are there little sort of tidbits that you can share that you've seen across the board? So maybe not specifically client-wise, but anything that you've been able to identify or see.
At the moment, as you say, it's always changing, but the biggest, I guess, the overriding thing that I always focus on that underpins every post that I do is that you want people to share it, especially on Facebook, because it's so hard to be found on Facebook. So if you're what a lot of people tend to do is they create content and they can be really, really specific about what they're doing and who they are and all that. And I always say, you've got, every now and then, you've just got to step back and do something generic, because you've got new followers or whatever. Not everybody knows the ins and outs of what you're doing and what you're all about. So I've found that the more generic posts, so it could be who you are as a business and what you do and what you love doing, and just doing a random post like that every now and then, that's going to be more shareable than something really specific, because new people will be interested in that, if that makes sense. So
that's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and especially on Facebook, sharing, as I said, is the only way really that you can grow, because organic reach is just so low. So adding value as well, like through tips that you can provide that your followers are interested in, and they'll go, you know what, I've got friends who are interested in what she just said, so I'll share that as well. So it's kind of like but shares, and also getting people to comment, because that's what the algorithm loves. So it's not really so much about exactly what you post, but it's having that little bit of knowledge behind it to know what people are going to share and what's going to spark interest that people will comment about. So as an example, last night on my page, I talked about how I don't like coffee.
I saw that, yeah.
And I just talked about I don't like coffee, and the reason why is because my brothers made me eat raw coffee, and I'm scarred for life, and blah, 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 blah. And things, random things like that. You might not so much get shares out of that because it's more a personal thing about you, but you will get people commenting. Yeah. It's got nothing to do with your business, but it's a general interest. It humanizes you.
Yes.
So people will comment on it in that way. And things like that get so many comments. And so failing the human element, it's the education or the generic stuff that gets shared. So so they're probably the two main tips at the moment.
Love it. And I noticed that with mine too, not so much on Facebook, but I think on Instagram, when you do reintroduce yourself and you mention how you came to be and how your business started and what your background is and what you're there for, even sharing an image of yourself rather than Unsplash or something like that. So something really personal. I feel like more people will interact with that comment on that, and you really get that high engagement rather than, just something that's
Exactly. And showing your face, as much as I hate showing my face, you know, I've got the messiest bun in the universe that my pet bird thinks is a bird's nest. Um, so so that's why, like, another thing with social media, I guess, is having a photo shoot done, because you're never going to look better than what you do when you're in a photo shoot where you've got a professional who's made you look half decent. You don't have your pajamas on like what I get around in normally. So I'm more comfortable showing my face in that way. But showing your face is definitely how you'll get the comments. Absolutely. And sharing your business journey and personal things about you, even if it's random about coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And hindsight is a great thing, right? Once we go through these different experiences, there's certain things, I guess, that we would perhaps do differently, or sometimes we wouldn't. So is there anything based on your launch of Savvy Sally and going through that process that you look back and think, I would have done that differently, and why?
That is a fantastic question. I think the underpinning thing for me is self-confidence. Mm-hmm. So I would just love if I had more self-confidence when I started the business, because I think based on that, I undervalued myself and what I could offer a lot. Yeah. And that has flow-on effects within your business. You know, you're not as profitable and things like that. And I'm also I'll go above and beyond, you know, and not charge people for things sometimes. And, you know, it only took me 5 minutes and all that sort of thing. So I guess I would have liked to have had maybe some coaching up front to get me started on the right foot, rather than having to figure it out as I went along in terms of pricing. And what I do as well in social media, it's really hard to find what other people charge. No one talks about that. No. So yeah, so it would have been nice to have known what other people are charging, so I can sort of figure out where I sit among there. But that's probably, in terms of the overall journey, I don't think I'd really change anything. I mean, I've learned a lot. Absolutely, I've learned a lot. And I'm still learning, and I'm always doing courses and that sort of thing. Yeah, and I pretty much love every second of what I do.
And it shows through. Yeah, you can really tell. And because
I've got my arms waving around everywhere when I talk, like, not even though you can only see me, I've got my arms, I'm like, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I'm really happy with where I am, but I want to go to the next stage now as well. And yeah, so it's exciting. So nothing really major to change, I think. Yeah. And ask me that at 2 a.m. though, and I'll probably have a different answer.
Absolutely. But I agree with you. I think you learn more from the things that didn't go right than your successes. And it's through times where it might be, I guess, a little bit quiet, like we've just gone through, you know, with COVID, having some of those changes that we've never been through or experienced before. But it's those tough times or those quieter times that will get you through, you know, those moments, because you've had those lessons, because it hasn't been an easy journey. And we all, I think, at one point go through, am I undervaluing things? You know, am I pricing things at the right amount? Same with you, if it only takes me 5 minutes. But there's also a quote that I saw on Instagram about that, and it says, it may have only taken me 5 or 10 minutes, you know, to do that for you, but it's actually taken, you know, 8 or 10 years of experience and knowledge to do it so quickly in that amount of time. They have said it quite eloquently in the quote, and I'm not doing as good a job of it as I am right now, but it's along those lines of, yeah, it may only take me a short period of time, but it is all of those years of knowledge and experience that enables me to be able to do it in a shorter amount of time than it would for you to have to do it yourself.
So true. I'm going to remember that. I love that.
Yeah, because it's what we need to keep in mind. You know, that sometimes it's hard to think and remember this too, but because we have been doing what we have been for so long, it does come easier and more naturally to us. And I find the same thing about SEO. When you mention the word SEO, people automatically, you just see the wall, the bricks start to, pile up on top of each other, and they're like, oh no, I can't do this. And it's until they do the coaching, or they'll come to a training, session or a webinar, and they go, oh, it's not that overwhelming or difficult to do. It's applying some common sense principles, but it's just knowing the things to look out for. As you were saying with, Facebook, what type of content should you be sharing? What are the goals that it is that you want to achieve through putting that post up? Because it is an investment of your time. So you want to try and maximize that with as little budget, that we have, getting the most out of what it is that we're sharing and what we're posting. But yes, to us, it might come quite easily and quite naturally, but to others who are not living and breathing what we do, it's really quite overwhelming and really difficult for them. So yeah, it's not so much the amount of time, but it's the years of experience, it's applying that knowledge, and then it's seeing those outcomes for ourselves and for other businesses that is your service, that's your product that you're providing out there.
That's so true. Like I just totally agree with everything that you say. And when you're so involved in the industry that you're in, you can forget, like you assume that what you know isn't anything special. You're just like, oh, everybody knows that, but they don't. Like even when you talk about SEO, people might go, what is SEO? And, even you forget that because you're in there every day and all that sort of thing. So you forget that you actually do know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you have the experience. Yeah.
And you are a specialist. I'm not so much a fan of the word expert or guru or those kinds of things, but I think specialist is a really nice way of saying, yeah, I do know my shit. I do know what I'm talking about. And you do forget some of the most basic things. And I just think, oh, isn't that common knowledge? But it's not. So yeah, making sure that you are seeing that value. And I think that other people then also respect that and see your value too when you start to respect yourself and start to give yourself props for what it is that you do know and how much you are helping people as well. One of the things I love that you shared, was about your coffee post last night and being able to build that visibility organically on platforms like social media. So do you find that that is your main platform in order to build awareness about your business and your brand, or what other things do you do in order to get visible?
I guess it is the main platform because it'd probably look weird if it wasn't, considering that that's what I do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and I just did an episode about this in my podcast, outside of social media, networking and relationships has been the absolute biggest thing. And my theory in business is to be generous, just to fly in the face of what I just said about not charging enough. But I am a kind of generous in business. So in my community, I've done a lot of things that have built my profile in that way. So it might be just helping people and giving something of value and that sort of thing. So around my community, that's what I'm known for. Oh, talk to Savvy Sally. And that's what they call me. No one calls me by my name. I'm just Savvy Sally. I don't either.
You're always Savvy Sally to me. I don't know you by anything. Like, I don't even know your last name unless I go and have a look at your emails, or I don't even know what your last name is. Like, you're just Savvy Sally to me.
Well, there you go. That's great branding, I suppose. But yeah, I get known. I'm known as Savvy Sally, and everyone's like, oh, you got a problem with social media? Go see Savvy Sally. Do this, do that. And I think that's just come from being generous and being out there in the community and not hiding behind my computer.
Yes.
Even though that's what I do. And a lot of people, I guess, especially when they're starting out, they think, oh, I've got to build up my social media presence. But to tell you the truth, I think I'd still be in the same position even if I didn't have a social media account, because most of my clients have come through word of mouth and connections within the community and that sort of thing. But I definitely see my social media as how I'm going to reach new people.
Yes.
People are much broader than within my own community, but locally it's definitely, those personal connections and networking groups and doing presentations for the business chamber and that type of thing.
Offline. And this is a reoccurring theme that has popped up in every single podcast interview that I've done with my guests. Word of mouth and that offline networking through our community groups, and as you said, sharing such value and content and really supporting people within our communities. It really does spread like wildfire.
Yep.
Whether you do something good or do something bad, either or is going to spread, right? So
Exactly.
you may as well do good, because that is what's going to then generate, as you said, when someone, bumps into Joe at the supermarket and they start having a chat about life and how's business going, and, oh, you really need help with that. They know exactly who it is that they're going to refer to when it comes to their social media, presence. And yes, being behind a computer is great, but it certainly does, have its limitations. And there's a difference, I think, between meeting someone in person and just chatting to them via a DM or via a message or on Facebook or whatever it is. Like, I know that when you and I met in person, it's a different energy. And it really does build that connection and that relationship a little bit more. And again, my area of expertise is online and visibility and all that kind of stuff, but I absolutely know the value of offline marketing and getting yourself out there and building up those networks and that community, because we might be running our own businesses, we might be those solopreneurs, but building a business isn't actually doing it alone. So the point that we're at right now, I didn't get to where I am at this stage through doing everything by myself. I'm here because of a lot of love and support that I've received from people within my local community, and then expanding that, further into like Sydney and Melbourne and all those kinds of things. But we don't get here alone.
Yep.
And I
That's
think,
so true.
Yeah, sitting behind a computer is one thing, but really putting yourself out there. But it does take confidence. Like the first networking event that I went to in Wollongong, I remember I was sitting on a stool in a very dark corner and I did not know how to approach people, because I had just spent about 6.5 years working from home for an agency where we didn't need to meet and greet. We didn't need to market ourselves or our personal brand. And so having those, abilities to get up and actually speak to people that you don't know, that takes a lot of practice and that takes time. I don't know if you found that as well, moving from your financial services background, then having kids and then putting yourself out there, and really that personal branding process and experience. But it's not easy when you first start out. Like, did you find any speed bumps when you started to really dip your feet into the water with that?
I think I've always been a social person. And so even financial planning is, a lot of people think it's about sales, but it's actually all about relationships. And so I've always been in my career used to dealing with people from all different walks of life, all different ages, genders, everything, and having to relate to everybody. So with financial planning, that was fine. And that's what I always did. But then when I had kids and I left work, then I definitely lost confidence. Absolutely. Because I'd felt like I'd just been out of it, out of the zone or whatever. And I wasn't used to having meetings anymore and that type of thing. It was only for probably 4 years or something. But when we first started South Coast Kids and we were talking with others about, maybe advertising through us, definitely I hardly ever spoke. But now
you can't stop ya. Try and put a lid on it.
I know, and I can't walk down the street and everyone's like, "Oh, hello," and blah blah blah, and yeah. So I find networking now, I don't even talk about what I do a lot of the time. I just talk to people as a person,
I love it.
Yeah, and then they'll ask, "Oh, so what is it that you do?" And I'll say, "Oh, blah, blah, blah." But I won't go up and introduce myself as, "Oh, I'm Savvy Sally and I have a podcast and this is what I do." And, it's like, I'm just not into that. I'm more interested in the other person and what they're doing. And I think that comes from financial planning as well, is I'm more of a person who asks the questions rather than gives the answers, like, if that makes sense. When you're first meeting people, you're learning about them, and that's what I like to do. So I love the networking and all that, but definitely there was a little blip there after I had the kids, for sure.
I found the same thing, and I found working from home for such a long period of time that you do lose some of those skills. Like, you forget who you are, and it really takes time to rebuild the confidence to be able to go up to people. And I'm the same. The last thing on my mind is telling them what I do, because then I know I'm going to have to spend the next 45 minutes to an hour explaining what it is that I do. I can't just say, oh, it's SEO or visibility. There's so much more to it than just a title, I guess, or, what it is. So I'm with you. I love to meet people. I love to get to know what it is that they're interested in and what it is that they do. And usually asking me what it is that I do is very secondary, or comes in third or fourth. It's part of the conversation, but it's not really the purpose and point, I think, of going to these things. But I know I've also become really selective as to which networking opportunities and things I will go to, because once you do get that visibility and once your business grows, you get busy.
Yes.
And being a real gatekeeper of your time is just so important, because you can get lost in going to, the opening of an envelope, really, and spend most of your time just attending different things. And again, this has popped up in a few of the guest interviews that I've done on the podcast. You've got to be really selective, I think, as a small business owner with your time, because it is still an investment.
Absolutely. And we're doing everything, especially when you're a solo, you're kind of I do all my own admin, I do all my own accounting sort of thing, I do all my own marketing, and I do my actual work that I have to do as well. And so, being selective absolutely is important, especially for someone like me. I live in a tiny little town. The nearest town's 25 minutes away. So, and that's where everybody else is. So I've got to add an extra hour or so on to meeting somebody for travel time.
Yes.
So it takes a big chunk out of my day.
Yeah, because you do, as you said, you've got billable hours. You've got to sit down and create and be in flow as well. So when you are in a creative, space, and that's the work that you do, you need to ensure you're in the right mindset, because we can't all just jump in the shower or have those moments of random creativity. Sometimes we've actually got to do it at our desk, right?
Exactly. And I love that point too about being in the flow of creativity, because that's one of the biggest things that I talk about when I'm coaching people is scheduling things. So it's a time-saving exercise when you do things in advance, but it also, you get into that flow. And with your social media posts especially, because people can struggle with, what the hell should I talk about now? Whereas if you go in and go, right, I'm going to schedule the week's worth of content every Monday, which is what I try to do, you get into a flow and you go, oh, I've just talked about that. This will flow on nicely after that, and la, la, la. It's just so much easier when you get into this flow of things. Absolutely. I had to throw in a social media reference there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what this episode is all about. It's all about the social love. And one thing that people may not know, I just did a blog post about this actually, but social media helps your SEO. So one of the common things that I get from small business owners is they'll come to me and say, Dawes, I've launched a website, but I've done nothing about my SEO. And I'll say to them, okay, so have you set up a Facebook page or an Instagram page, or are you on LinkedIn? Yeah. And it's like, well, you are already working towards it, but you just didn't know about it. So there's so many correlations between the two. Yes, they are two separate platforms as such, or two different areas, but there is lots of things that cross over.
Absolutely, and because your social media is like the top of the funnel. That's where you're sort of getting to know people, or people are becoming aware of you.
Yes.
And the idea is that they should then go to your website to check out what you can do for them and that sort of thing. That's definitely the way I view it. They're related for sure.
Absolutely. And Google loves them too. So when Google can see that you're doing things on social media, it starts to connect the dots. But you're right. Like, they'll go and take a look at your bits and pieces online. And then the next thing they should be doing is taking a look at your website, what it is that you do, a little bit more about you, your services, where you're located, all that kind of stuff. So it's just connecting all of those dots and making sure that you've got that consistent presence online, but they are so related.
Yep.
So anyone out there, don't worry. If you have launched a website and you think you've not done any SEO, you probably have, you're just not aware of it.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really interesting topic. I love, as I said, I love anything to do with visibility and SEO. I wouldn't necessarily claim myself as a social media expert, but it definitely has that brand awareness and does build that, visibility for your business. It's just so important to be on there and to be visible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, we've just come out of the naughty C word, which is COVID. And I guess there's been lots of changes that we've seen, both with the businesses we work with as well as for our own businesses. And would you say you've had to make some changes to both yourself and to the clients that you work with as a result of COVID? And what are you seeing as maybe some of the emerging changes now that are coming through, now that we're at the other side? And this could be a really big conversation.
It's a great question. I know that for me personally, when Corona started, I just thought, oh no one's going to have the money, because I had a lot of clients who were tourism based.
Right.
I thought no one's going to have the money to pay a social,
or the businesses. Like if you can't bring in the tourists, there's no really point in marketing. Yeah,
that's right. But the irony was, it was actually the opposite. I found that they had nothing better to do but sit on their iPhones and that all day, unless you've got kids and then you've got zero time. But otherwise, that connection was more important than ever. So definitely when there's something big like that happening in the world, you have to adjust the way you approach your marketing on social media and otherwise. And this is what I did with a lot of my clients. So I did have a couple of them sort of pull back, which I completely understood. They weren't getting accommodation bookings and all that sort of thing. But I did say to them, look, I really think you need to maintain a presence, because everyone's in isolation. We're in an absolutely beautiful spot that's close to Sydney. They are going to flock here when this is over. So you want to be getting in front of people and making them aware that you are here, so that as soon as they say, righto, you can leave your house again, that's where they're going to come.
Yeah.
So it definitely required a change of tack from that perspective. And also I found I was using that time personally to build more of my here's how I can help you. And I was definitely trying to just help people through that period. So I guess that was it from a social media perspective. But from a business perspective, I think the biggest lesson that it taught a lot of people that I know, a lot of businesses, is to be adaptable and it's not enough anymore to just have maybe one stream of income or just be a bricks and mortar shop and not have a website as well. You have to really be strategic about the marketing that you do, where you're showing up, the customer experience, I guess the traditional ways of, I'll open a shop and people will come. It just doesn't work anymore. You need that online presence. You can't be, as I always say, half-assed.
Yeah.
You've got to be all in with everything to do with your business. So I think that was the biggest thing, and being adaptable, but also preparing for if the poo's going to hit the fan, and being able to move quickly. And that's the benefit that we have as a small business. We can pivot and adjust as we need to, much quicker than a big organization.
Agree.
So it was just an interesting time, and I actually got busier myself, the opposite of what I thought. I thought it was going to be the end of me, but I ended up, because I adjusted a little bit, I ended up getting more clients coming in that weren't necessarily in the market that I was focusing on before.
Yes.
And that's been really, really fun.
Excellent.
It's been really good. So my business kind of doubled during that period, which was really unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love lots of your key points that you've shared there, particularly with bricks and mortar businesses not having that online presence. And we did see a lot of like restaurants and a lot of cafes, enable that online experience to happen. But it took a pandemic for us to all stop and reassess our businesses, the structure of our businesses, and the way in which we can diversify some of those income streams. Because if you are a bricks and mortar, or vice versa, like if you were just predominantly online, and you didn't have any options or things that you did offline, that's also going to be not such a great idea, because we don't have control over things like internet and access and all those types of things. So you've got to really think about your different buckets, and you've got to think about filling those buckets, to a certain degree, because having it all just in one is really not the way to remain sustainable or to be able to grow. And I love the way that you said, you were predominantly looking after a particular area of tourism and clients within that bucket. But through COVID, you've realized that, hey, I can also help all of these other, types of businesses. And having that mindset and having that open mind about it is what allows you to then, as you said, pivot and move into a different direction. I think sometimes if we are so strict on staying in one lane and not thinking about putting our indicator on and moving left or moving right, that it can definitely hinder us in that way.
Absolutely. I think that's the big, just be a little bit flexible. It's not the end of the world to be a little bit flexible. It's not a failure. It's not anything like that. It's actually smart to be flexible. When you see that, hang on, I need to adapt here, you just do it. You just have to adapt. So you can't just go, no, I'm refusing to do that. And I think there's a lot of businesses who have come out of it going, well, wow, that was full on, and I've learned X, Y, Z out of that. And so I think in that way, the whole COVID thing was kind of positive to the people who didn't get, lose their jobs and all that. It was kind of a positive thing. People had time to work on their business and not in their business so much. And to adapt and get those websites built. And I launched my podcast and
same.
All that.
Our to-do lists of the stuff that we've been wanting to do but just haven't had the time to do it. Definitely, I think, was an opportunity, as you said, to work on your business rather than in your business. And there were a few missed messages that I saw, particularly on social media during that time, where I guess some specialists or experts, whatever word you'd like to use, were saying, oh, now is really not the time to be marketing. But really, you can't just hide into a cave or in a tunnel and completely disappear, because as with all things, nothing is permanent. So whatever is happening at the moment can change at any moment. And if we all go into hibernation and we feel a bit icky because we're like, oh, we really shouldn't be promoting or, sharing our services or our products. I mean, we do need to continue to grow and be sustainable, but I think it's the way in which we share the message. It's what we're saying, but like how we're saying it is what's important. So certainly have to be mindful that people do have different circumstances now. Some people have had to close down their businesses, they've lost their jobs. And I think being able to recognize that, not so much ignore it, but, acknowledging that. But we certainly can't just hide, in a cave and disappear from visibility, because that's not going to help anybody.
That's right.
When we do come out of it, people are going to need us. And as you said, you ended up doubling your business during that time. So I think it's important, the type of messaging that we're sending out there, but continuing definitely to keep that visibility going so that, we don't disappear into thin air, and we can definitely continue to do what we do. So
that's right. Yeah, just adjust your messaging. It's a little bit insensitive when thousands of people have lost their jobs to be going, oh, come and buy this amazing $4,000 jacket. That's a little bit, definitely that type of marketing is like, that's not quite right.
Yeah.
But marketing that's sympathetic to what people are going through and adding value or sharing more about you personally was what worked when that was happening, building more of that personal connection with people, empathizing. And it's all a long-term game anyway, and how do you want to be seen on the other side is what I had in the back of my mind. Do you want to be seen as the person who disappeared?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be seen as the person who just went, yep, this is happening and here's how I can still help you, or here's being sympathetic to what's going on and that type of thing. And that's definitely the way I wanted to be seen.
Absolutely.
When we came out the other side.
Agree with that as well. And it's just diversifying some of your offerings. So I know for myself, I had to cancel all my in-person workshops, that were happening at my training little centre here at the office. But I also knew that, hey, this is the time when people are working on their business. And this is when they need someone like me to help them break down that overwhelm when it comes to the topic of visibility or SEO. And so transitioning some of those things to an online format and running webinars and training sessions and audits and doing, lots of stuff I did as well that was just pro bono, complimentary, just there to help and support our communities during a really shitty bloody time. Is what you need to do, but it just builds and connects with so many other people that you may have not had the opportunity to do had this not happened. So thinking about it in those ways, and as you said, just being mindful of circumstances, empathizing with that, but also recognizing that you still have lots of value to share, and it's usually during those types of situations when they need people like you and I most.
Exactly.
So, disappearing is not an option. Absolutely. So it's been so fun to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for being my guest. Now, if you'd like to get in touch with Savvy Sally, you can visit her on the website at savvysally.com.au. She's also on Facebook and Instagram, and her handles are at Savvy Sally Content. Now, when this podcast episode is published, I'll also be popping all of those social media and website links on there. I guess, are there any parting words or anything else that you would like to share with our audience today? Anything that's up and coming that you can, give us some insight into?
Yes, I'm working on a fun little thing at the moment, which it's kind of, I don't want to give too much away because I like surprises. I like surprising people, but it's something that you can use to help your social media that's quick and easy, and you can, I guess, kind of like an audit system, but with like having me in your pocket at the same time as well to go, do it this way, don't do it that way.
Love it.
And all that sort of thing. So I've hopefully, if I can smash it out by the time this episode gets published, it will be ready. Because I think that will add a lot of value to people and just demystify whether you've got things set up in the right way, whether you're optimizing every little element of your social media where it can be optimized to help you get visible on there. So
beautiful. I love it. So I'll be popping a link onto that underneath the episode as well once that goes live, and I'll be pushing you along, just a little nudge, gentle nudge saying, how's it going, Savvy? Savvy Sally, come on, let's get it going. But yes, we'll definitely pop that on there because I know how much value that will provide to our listeners as well. So yes, thank you so much in giving us that little insight to your little secret that's going to hopefully pop out quite soon. Which would be fantastic. Excellent. Well, again, appreciate you being a guest today. So much golden value for our listeners. Look forward to staying in touch, and we'll also be creating a few things together as well. So for our listeners, keep your ears and eyes opened on socials and our websites, and we'll share more information about those little exciting bits as they develop as well.
Yes, we definitely will. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Sally. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for giving this show a listen. And don't forget to leave your feedback and rating, as this would make me very happy. Now, if you want to learn more about me or my services, please jump on over to letsgetvisible.com.au, where you'll also find links to my socials so you can connect there as well. Okay, well, that's a wrap for another episode. So I'll join you next time on the Let's Get Visible podcast.